Hey, how's it going? So continuing on the theme. So I'm in First Kings 13, where God tells a prophet to go to a certain city and do miracles and exploits of God there. And he gives him the instructions to come back home a different road, a different route. And he disobeys God after doing these miracles and preaching his message. He disobeys God because it says an old prophet. Now think of the symbolism there, the old prophetic move. The prophet is the imagery of spirit, whereas the apostle is the blueprint. Some people describe it as like a husband-wife like relationship, like the masculine energy of God as the apostle laying the blueprint, gazing at the blueprint until it becomes, and then the prophet is the feminine energy that also speaks the end from the beginning, but prophesies of the process of the egg being impregnated by the sperm of the blueprint, and then the egg going through a process of giving birth eventually. And so this prophet is deceived by an old prophet and tries to go back home the same way, the same road, the same route that he took to get there. And he's because the prophet says, "Come have dinner with me," and he does, and then he gets on the and then a lion eats him and kills him. So what I'm saying is, from the way the Spirit has ministered this parable to me, is the road to ascension, the road to when the earthy person in you, when you remember in John 1, it says he who is of earth speaks of earth, and he who is from heaven speaks of heaven. Paul wrote it this way in the epistle: the first man is of the earth, earthy; the second man is the Lord from heaven. So on the road to ascension, the earthy part of you, the human part of you, wants to see through the eyes of spirit. So it goes on a road of self-sacrifice until it sees through the eyes of spirit. That's the city. That's the habitation. Your consciousness is now living, breathing, and eating the things of the heavenly dimension. But when it comes time, and I believe this is a set ordained time in most people's lives, now after crystallizing in that type of life, now it comes time for your spirit to want to descend into the human earthy beingness and see through her eyes. He, the sperm, I the Lord, change not. I see the end from the beginning. That's why men in general are more visual and women are more relational, because the masculine blueprint of your ethereal nature, its job is to gaze at the end result, the positive outcome, your goal, the thing you want to achieve, the thing you want to have happen, to just stare it down until you press the subatomic particles of your reality to start conforming, until the psychic cloud within you is now saturated. So the road for the water in the river, when the water in the river takes that road to ascension called evaporation, it's traveling a road where it has no awareness of some of the barren land around it, but it only knows one thing: I'm going to experience up there. And once the cloud is saturated with all the evaporated droplets of water, now the cloud, its awareness is down there. There's some barren land, people starving to death. So I'm going to pour my rain. Now that I'm saturated, I'm going to rain down, descend. Revelation 21, I saw the bride descend to heal the nations. Now I'm going to rain down, which is a different road, a different path, a different view. Okay, so the road to the city is self-sacrifice, the New Jerusalem above. And then in Revelation 21, the New Jerusalem above. Sorry, my phone keeps slipping. The New Jerusalem above. And then in Revelation 21, what is it, in Galatians, he talks about the New Jerusalem above, the habitation of our consciousness, our psychology is saturated with the things that pertain to the heavenly dimension or the ethereal layer of our spirit, or the gaze at the end result. to press the elements to start conforming to it. Every Olympic champion set their gaze upon that goal. But in the descension, they had to train hard and do the work too. In Revelation, the book of Revelation, it says that of those who had perfect faith, it says their works do follow them. So if you are visualizing for ethnic equality, visualize it until your psychic cloud is saturated. Like it says in Revelation 1, he cometh with clouds. The revelation of Jesus, the apocalypse of Jesus, is through the saturated cloud of your spirit. You don't just get to a place where you walk into a room and, oh my God, people can just feel God on you. God just sits on you. Oh my God. It should actualize itself in activism. It should either you're clearing out the hospitals through your healing gift, or you're creating social change where some of the effects of colonialism, hierarchy, classism, sexism, racism, some of that is the reason for sickness. So why heal the symptoms when you could be healing the root cause? So you become an agent of change in the path that leads back to the earth, back to your human self with the glorified spirit very much intact. So the road back home to the earthen self is because now that the spirit has been saturated, the ethereal part of you, your spiritual giftings, your spiritual illumination, understanding of what your mentors taught you, you have refined it and you have taken it a little bit further than they did. Your cloud is saturated. Your ethereal nature is maturing. And so now the ethereal nature says, you know what? I have a dream. I want to experience life through the earthen vessel, through the human energies, the 5 natural senses. The 5 natural senses have experienced by aligning, experienced the 5 spiritual senses. Now the 5 spiritual senses want to descend and experience life without compromise. They don't change their nature, but experience life through the 5 natural senses, so that the man and the woman within you, the spirit and soul within you, can come together and fall in love and make love and create a third kind of beingness, which is right in between the heaven and the earth, called the mountain. Another way of saying this is that you get to a point after saturation through full dedication to spirit and become pure spirit. There comes a time when the earth nature will start calling you to itself. Just like maybe 20 years ago, you experienced a time where the heavenly nature was calling you upwards to itself. In Revelation 4, come up hither, come up here, and I will show you things to come. The Lion of the tribe of Judah unsealed your living epistle. You are the book of life. You are the Christ. You are the ethereal reality of heaven. You are the ethereal spirit, but you couldn't see it until the lion aspect of your being unsealed it. This is what, Revelation 4? The Lion of the tribe of Judah was the only thing that could unseal the book so that you could read it, see it, and experience it. But that's the book that describes your spirit nature. The evaporation process of ascension, where you are becoming a saturated cloud. But then, when it's time to go to take another road, a different view, a different view of reality, the spirit experiencing the human, now if you try to stick with the old viewpoint of self-sacrifice, see, the road to the city is self-sacrifice. The different road home is self-affirmation. Let me say it again. The road to the city, the road to that great manifestation of a long season of ministry. You're ministering in the churches or in the sect or in the mosque or in the wherever, the temple, whatever religion you're part of. You're ministering to the people who are like-minded. You're ministering for many years to the people who want to do what you have done. You're a forerunner to the obtaining of the state of consciousness that is pure spirit. What we don't have in the Second Testament, because now we're in the Third Testament, we need to know this new stuff. What we don't have in the Second Testament is the third beingness. Paul said the first man is of the earth, earthy, the second man is the Lord from heaven. And John and Paul both pointed to a coming time, saying, I saw the bride descend to heal the nations. Paul pointed to it by saying the archangel descend. It's the descending of the archangel with the shout of God and the trumpet of God. But to describe that life, they could not do because it wasn't their time. So in the road of ascension, there is self-sacrifice, which you can find all through the second covenant, which we call the New Testament. Romans 12:1, offer yourselves a living sacrifice so that you may prove what is the perfect will of Spirit. But when it comes the ordained time for earth to magnetize your spirit into itself, the way that heaven magnetized your earth into itself previously, when that time comes, you need to be equipped with knowledge and understanding from the wisdom realm to be able to do it. Otherwise, it'll happen because it's a sovereign move. It's the pattern that the Creator put in us. It'll happen, but it'll happen in a way that's scandalous and reckless, maybe even dangerous or harmful. Because if the sexual and emotional part of you, which is the feminine energy of the earth and nature, if the sexual and emotional and critical thinking skills, if it starts calling you to itself, magnetizing your spirit into itself so that the true perfect will of God in the Third Testament can be done, and you still are on the road of self-sacrifice, then you will pump those brakes, and you can't do anything about it. All you're doing is creating skid marks on the road and damaging your tires. And what does that look like when we put the brakes on? Listen, I have to give you examples, otherwise people, I don't know what you're talking about. It's too deep. So if I give you examples, maybe that will help make it more practical, because I do speak in very esoteric terminology. So, okay, what does that look like when we go with the old prophet, the old prophetic move, and have dinner? Remember, Jesus said to spirit-filled Christians in Revelation chapter 2, in chapter 3, he was addressing the churches, not non-believers, the churches, the 7 churches of Asia, spirit-filled Christians. He said, I stand at the door and knock. And if you let me in, I'll have dinner with you. In other words, I'm in you, but I'm in you in the previous view of me, your babe stage understanding of what I am. So I'm knocking on the door of your heart to unveil a greater measure, to unveil how to go from legalism to grace, and in today's day, how to go from grace to equality. That which pertains to the healing of the nations, not just the healing of, well, it's not healing at all. To conform the nations to your religion is not a healing thing. It's colonialism. It's produced war. So, but he stands at the door and knocks to who? To Christians, spirit-filled Christians. I want to show you more of what I am, but you've got to be willing to let that in. So the feminine energy starts calling you to itself. The sexuality and the emotional realm for social activism, anti-racist activism, gender equality, gender spectrum equality. All that starts calling you to itself through the emotional realm, because you're starting to experience human-to-human empathy that you couldn't experience when you were detached from humanity, living in the spirit only. Your sexuality starts to reveal itself. Many married pastors with kids started to understand. I've known that I was gay my whole life, but I couldn't because of Romans 1, and they start to affirm it. And if they don't affirm it, what happened to Ted Haggart? Did he affirm it See, Jim Swilley and Ted Haggart are opposites. Ted Haggart is the guy who went into the old prophet's home to have dinner and tried to continue on the same road. What was that road? Self-sacrifice. And the road of self-sacrifice is filled with a lot of lies, like a lot of superstitions. Like in his case, Romans 1 told him being gay was a sin. So he stayed on that same road, trying to press the brakes and self-control, and he ended up in scandal, shame, getting with male prostitutes and drug addiction. Because that's what happens when you put the brakes on and try to live in self-denial at a ordained time in your life for self-affirmation. Self-affirmation is an ordained phase, because the spirit wants to know what that is. The spirit, the angels, the angelic realm in us desires, according to the book of Hebrews, desires to what? Desires to look into those things which we have in the new movement. The new movement then, from law to grace, and the new movement now, from grace to equality. Spirit-body equality will eventually produce ethnic and gender equality, but it starts within. Okay. So, whereas Jim Swilley, it wasn't scandal. It was, he understood that he was born gay, and it was a sacred affirmation of who God created him to be. No scandal. If Juanita Bynum, who became pure spirit, now when I say pure spirit, I mean, in her case, Pentecostal holiness, which pure spirit, the fullness of God, the fullness of spirit in Pentecostal holiness looks very different than pure spirit in the Vineyard Church. That's why someone like Juanita Bynum in the 1990s, who achieved pure spirit, hit that mark, looks very different than Heidi Baker, because Pentecostal holiness and Vineyard are two very different perceptions of God. But when she hit that mark, and then she didn't know that you were supposed to come home a different route, a different view, a different understanding of reality, a different understanding of God. She didn't know that the road of self-sacrifice that she took to becoming pure spirit, you were supposed to take a different road, the road of self-affirmation. So when you don't affirm your emotions, what happened to her? She became arrogant, abusive, and whatever you want to call what happened. Mental illness set in. And she, to this day, she's attempting to do her first works over to try to obtain what she had in the 90s and lost. Whereas, somebody who understands that the emotional part of you that has boundaries, the emotional part of you that can know yourself and know what you really want, can do it in a way that's not reckless, can do it in a way that's not angry, can do it in a way that is, more responsible. And so her deal wasn't like Mike Bickle, where he was putting the brakes on. Self-sacrifice was the road to ascension. Pastor of IHOP, International House of Prayer. He achieved full ascension, full spirit through intimacy with the heart-to-heart intimacy with Jesus. The road of self-sacrifice. He entered that city, and he entered the fullness of spirit for the Vineyard Church. But in the descending process, when his earth nature magnetized his spirit down into it, he didn't have any knowledge or point of reference for what that was supposed to look like. So he ended up, according to several women that he's been pastoring the last 30 years, that he manipulated them to have sex with him. So it wasn't beautiful and sacred. It wasn't. He didn't affirm his sexuality. It overtook him. I think Juanita Bynum's anger overtook her. I think Mike Bickle's anger overtook him, or sexuality overtook him, and it was done reckless and irresponsible. I think the Dalai Lama's sexuality overtook him, and that's why on that video you can find on YouTube where he's trying to grab Lady Gaga's crotch over and over and over again like a 12-year-old child, which is probably where he left emotional and sexual growth. He probably just entered samadhi, the higher state of spiritual awareness, and from there achieved Tathagata, which looks like in the American spelling Tathagita, which is the full actualization of spirit without any development of the human. The development of the human, you're supposed to grow sexually, relationally, emotionally. You're supposed to grow in your human five senses. But if the Dalai Lama was just pure spirit per some of the Buddhist teachings, then that would explain why he was trying to grab Lady Gaga's crotch. And that child that he put his tongue into, that wasn't his grandchild, and there was no candy involved. That wasn't some tradition. That was just perversion. I think Catholic priests raping little boys is because they disaffirmed their sexuality. And they when the ordained time of descension into earth, or come back to home, to earth, to Mother Earth within you, through a different route, they took the same route where they were demonizing their sexuality. And so you want to call your sexuality a devil, it will be a devil. I just read the statistics. 56% of Christian pastors are addicted to pornography because they don't affirm their sexuality. So when I affirmed my sexuality in 2011, it was done responsibly. I got out of Christianity. I did the right thing. I left the church. I never went to a Christian church service again because I no longer believe in the Second Testament. I believe in the Third Testament, which is not spirit only. It's not just ascension. It's the walking out of the bride descending and the archangel descending with a shout. It's the part of you, the archangel is that part of you that got saturated in your spirit that is now here to live out life as a human being. Not a human being that's constricted to certain ideals, but a human being that is exactly, according to Psalm 139, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And so I took my sovereignty back. I got my sex life back. I got in a dating app and I got, no misleading, nothing reckless, no reckless hedonism. Just I got in a dating app and in a poetic way, in a classy way. Said, look, I'm just basically I said in 4 paragraphs basically that I'm just here for sex, and several freshly divorced women who were in their 40s or 50s were also just needing to experience the erotic part of themselves, which is very healing. It's not sin. It's very healing. It's very holy. But if you're under the jurisdiction of the New Testament or the Second Covenant, then you will think it's sin. And or if you're under New Age, you might think it's ego gratification. So the ego in me, the sense of self, was the Eve part of me, was recreating the spirit by burning away the heavens that were, that's what the Epistle of Peter says, we're going to burn away the heavens through a sound, which is the subtle serpent. The serpent was more subtle than any creature. We see through a glass darkly. We see through a glass. That's why the Epistle of Peter says the heavens are the spirit world dimension that the agreement of the collective churches have created and emanated from their earthen nature. We agreed that the law of Moses is a type and a shadow, a prefiguring, and not a reality. That's what the Christian church has said. And that faith in grace, identity in Christ, will do the work in us that keeping the law of Moses could never have done. They created those heavens. They destroyed the heavens of Moses, and they created the heavens of Jesus. Similar ideal, different method. Instead of becoming pure spirit through works, we're going to become pure spirit through the law of attraction, is basically what they're saying. We're going to make our feminine energy of emotion to align with the masculine blueprint, and together the man and the woman within will stare down that goal until it happens. But yet I show you a more excellent way. So as we go into the Third Testament, now instead of Thomas 1:14, where Jesus said the woman will become the man, in other words, your sexuality and emotions and critical thinking skills will only serve one purpose, and that is to serve the purpose of the ethereal vision. Their only purpose is to align with the ethereal vision as a parallel. But in the Third Testament, there's contrast. Now opposites unite. Now opposites conjoin. Now the man stares at the end result, the positive result, and the woman stares down the obstacles and removes those obstacles. Because if you don't remove the demonic stronghold, then the vision does not have a landing place to manifest fully. This is why Lawrence Sanford, shortly before he passed away from the pandemic, this is why he said these words, and I quote, 90% of my prophecies, in other words, he said 90% of God's promises that he made to me have not happened. And then he died with 90% prophetic unfulfillment. I can tell you, this is not 100% of my prophecies happened. And I've got like 50 to 70 prophecies that were ladled upon me. Wonderful, amazing promises from God in the late 1980s. They all happened by 2003, 2004. Because I've always been the type of person that affirmed my humanity, even though I was doing it in a way that conformed my humanity to spirit. But there's still a way you can affirm your humanity, and if you do it enough, it'll eventually take it to the next level. It'll eventually take you to the next place where you're not a parallel, but you're a contrast, where you can actually remove the obstacles. You can actually do the work to remove the obstacles. And that is where the man looks one way, the woman looks another way. The spirit looks only at the end result, the positive outcome, and the woman stares down those obstacles and uses her severity. According to the Kabbalistic tree of life diagram, the feminine Sephiroth are severity. Severe. It goes forth and destroys the obstacle so that the sperm has an egg to land in and impregnate and bring forth a new creation. In the Second Testament, we thought a new creation was the way we felt so different. Oh, I feel so different because I'm aware of my spirit for the first time. But in the third Testament, which we'll come into in the age of Aquarius, it really is a new creation because opposites conjoin. Opposites come together, not a parallel. When the woman was yielded to the man, whether in the households, she's just submitted to her husband, or whether internally, your soul realm, your emotions and sexuality were just submitted to the Logos or the Bible that you're reading. That's a parallel. But when we allow a contrast, your spirit is staring down the end result and your feminine energy of emotion, the angst, like Hannah in 1 Samuel chapter 1, she was voicing her angst. She was the feminine energy removing the obstacle by speaking aggressively in prayer against what is vexing her. In her case, what was vexing her was being barren. She couldn't have children. And so opposites conjoined. Eli's word, the Logos, the end result from the beginning, said, you will have a baby, and her vexation being expressed and not denied, where she was no longer on the road to self-denial, where she just said, well, I'll wait on the Lord. If it's meant to be, it'll be. She wasn't on self-denial anymore. She was on self-affirmation road. And it didn't create more barrenness. She didn't, her speaking how vexed and despondent she was about her barrenness did not create more barrenness. It did not tell the universe, I want more barrenness. No. It created the prophet Samuel. She got pregnant and gave birth to Samuel, and Samuel, even from a young child, destroyed the old prophet, Eli. 1 Samuel chapters 1 through 3. So when you are involved in anti-racist activism, you are Hannah speaking forth your vexation about how the white New Agers and the white Christians constantly say there's no racism, and yet every system in place was built on white supremacy. And the heart attitude of the colonialism is engendered, imbued, and embodied in everything they say and do. And when you speak that to remove it from the astral, from the spirit world, Eve recreates the serpent of wisdom, which is Eve. Though subtle, though we see it through a dim mirror at first, it destroys the heavens that are, the heavens of the Jesus age, and it brings forth the heavens, a new heaven and a new earth of equality. Just like the heavens of Jesus had to come, it had to be. So it had their word, their feminine energy, working things out. Acts 21:21, they were working things out. James was rebuking Paul because he was just pure Jesus and no Moses. They were working things out. James was like, he said to Paul, I hear a rumor you have forsaken Moses. Yeah, Paul, in his heavenly dimension, per the epistle of Peter, the heavens of Moses had been burned away because he knew what that was. James was a fisherman and wasn't educated, so he didn't know what that was. So some Christians who are burning away religious trauma from Christianity, they know what they're talking about. They're not being brats. They're not being anger mongers. They know what they're talking about because they had a level of commitment. Maybe some of you didn't. And so Paul burned away the figure, the prefigure, the type in a shadow, burned it away, burned those heavens away completely so that he was pure grace and no mixing of law and grace. Peter, James, and John, being fishermen, and hadn't had that life as a Pharisee, had not had that life of full commitment to Yahweh through the law. They hadn't known what that was. They didn't know what that spirit was. They didn't know what those heavens really were. So, like, Peter still pulled away from Gentiles because Torah informed him to do that. So Paul publicly rebukes him. So they're working it out. So in today's age with equality, ethnic equality, gender equality, we're going to have the conversations and work it out because those heavens of the Jesus age, the Christianity age of the Roman Empire brought and colonialism brought, those heavens that we agreed upon and created have to be burned away so that the equality of all can come. Every human feeling valued, those heavens must come now. And it starts by saturating our internal cloud. Our psychic cloud gets saturated and eventually rains down. And people affirm other people's humanity because they have been affirming their own humanity.